What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a 2-minute warning podcast. Today, we're going to be giving our grades for the first round NFL draft for the 1 through 16 picks. Let's just hop right into it. What grade do you have for the Tennessee Titans?
So for me, I ended up giving them a B minus just because when I did my evaluation of Cam Ward, I didn't think he was quite worth the number one overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like in recent years, we've had like generational prospects be picked at one. Like last class, people were saying like the fifth quarterback might have been the number one quarterback this year. So I don't think that was quite worth the number one pick, especially with the other blue chip players in this class.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they needed a quarterback. He's the best one on the board. He has the most potential. So they're kind of like forced into this pick.
Yeah, I'm actually going to start this off with a pretty hot take. I have a D for the Titans.
Okay.
And let me explain a little bit. I feel like there are a couple generational prospects in this class. And I feel like generational kind of gets thrown around too much, especially near draft season. I feel like people confuse blue chip with generational. There's a difference between a blue chip prospect and a generational prospect, in my personal opinion. I think there's a lot of people that would consider Armand Membu a blue chip prospect, but he's nowhere near a generational left tackle or right tackle prospect. And so I think there's a difference, but I think there's two, maybe three clear generational prospects in this class. It's been a long time since we've seen a guy like Travis Hunter who plays both sides of the ball at an elite level. I mean, he's number one wide receiver in my list and number one corner on my list. So that's elite. You could argue Abdul Carter. I think he's a phenomenal pass rusher, but he's only played 1 year at pass rusher, and he's showcased so much that he can do already. I think if he played a few more years, he would be considered generational to me. To me, he's like right on the edge of that. But Genty's also a clear generational to me, having a top 3 season in the college football ever. To me, it makes no sense to pass on all 3 of these guys for a quarterback that I don't even think is worth a top 16 pick. In my opinion, I don't think Cam Ward is that good. And going to a situation like this, you have so many holes on that roster. I don't think he's in a situation to succeed. And I'm predicting that he won't succeed. Therefore, I think it's a bad pick because you could have taken, an Abdul Carter to shore up that edge and just have him for years to come and start building up a defense. Take Travis Hunter. You shore up 2 sides of the ball, arguably, and you just keep building that defense and offense. And you bring in a new quarterback, like maybe next year you're in competition for Arch Manning because your team still sucks. You bring in Arch, and now you're building a team around him that hopefully can get him some help. This year, I feel like Cam Ward's in a situation where he almost has nothing to work with, and I just think it's a terrible spot to put a guy, even if you believe in him, which I don't, but even if you believe in him that highly that he's worth the number one overall pick. I mean, even Cam Ward believers like yourself don't think he's a number one overall pick. So it's just, to me, it doesn't make any sense when you could have taken a phenomenal player at 1.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd say normally first-round quarterbacks, the success rate is below 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at like low odds player, plus he's not that number one generational player.
We just like to take a moment to ask you guys to subscribe, maybe like the video, leave us a comment. We're really trying to build a community out here. We're going to respond to all you guys. We love getting your takes on what, you think we're crazy about, or, what we think we're dead on. And we're just really excited to make this podcast dream a reality. So we really would appreciate it. It's free. You can always change your mind. But let's get back into the video.
But at number 2, the Jaguars traded up to take Travis Hunter. They gave up a first next year, the 5th overall pick, and then I think like the 36th overall pick, an early second rounder. For me, I gave this an A minus just because I'm not a huge trading up person. He is a generational prospect. This type of player never is going to come around again, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much that's going to translate to winning though, which is why it's not an A plus. Like, obviously it's going to help you win, but how much is it going to help? As much as 3 really high draft pick players? I don't know, but I do really like the prospect, and I like that the Jaguars made an aggressive move to get a good player.
Yeah, I have the exact same grade. I have an A minus. The only reason I don't have it higher is because they did give up a lot to move up 3 spots. Giving up a second, which was borderline a first, being so high in the second round. Giving up the 5th pick, like, again, you only moved up 3 spots. And giving up a future first, which, very well may be a top 5 pick again next year, if not top 10. And so I think that it was a little bit hefty, but at the same time, this player is generational. Like you said, he is a one-in-a-kind player, and he's kind of worth that amount. There's definitely an argument to be made that he's worth what they gave up. And clearly we think so if we're giving him an A- grade. But like you said, I don't think it's going to translate to winning this season. I don't think they have their quarterback situation figured out. I don't think they have a lot of things figured out. I think the Jags think they're a lot further along than they are. and it's just causing them to get more and more set back. But I think that he's a great player, and he'll be a great player for years to come for him on 2 spots, and they've already said they're willing to play him at both. So I think he's going to be a phenomenal player for them, and it's definitely at least an A- grade.
Yeah, definitely. At number 3, the Giants took Abdul Carter, who for me was my second-ranked prospect. I ended up giving this an A. You stuck and picked. You picked one of the best prospects, if not the best, arguably, prospect in the draft, at a position that you're looking to upgrade on, even with Kayvon Thibodeau at your other edge spot. He's not a guy you really want to pay, kind of hasn't really made the impact they wanted to, spending the 5th overall pick a few seasons ago. So for me, I just really like this pick, and obviously it was an obvious pick, so I'm not really going to give it an A+. A+ is really for the guys that I have really high on my board that end up falling later to like get a lot of value, but I really like this pick for the Giants.
I ended up going with an A+, actually. I know you just said that you don't like giving it to them unless they fall or whatever. I don't think that that's fair. You took the best player available, and honestly, he shouldn't have been there at 3. He's ridiculous. Like I said, arguably generational prospect, which is like I said, gets thrown around too much, but it's a huge word. And he's just so talented. Shores up that D line. I mean, phenomenal pick. I mean, yes, they have 2 edge rushers that people like. Both are very overrated as of right now, with being Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. I just think that he's just a one-of-a-kind player. Like I said, 1 year of experience at edge rusher, and he's already that phenomenal. Like, that is insane. He's got tons of experience inside if you really want to play him. He's got tons of versatility. It's just unfair that they got him at 3. Anybody can agree that, these are everyone. I thought, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, that's the top 3. Those are the top 3 players. But I think that most people would agree that Abdul Carter is better than the 3rd spot, if that makes any sense. And I think if you include positional value, he's more valuable than Travis Hunter, in my opinion, just because edge is so valuable. Therefore, I think that it's a better pick than taking Travis Hunter, and they didn't have to give anything up. I think it's just the perfect pick. Yes, it's the obvious pick, but it's also the perfect one. Therefore, it's an A+.
Yeah, I mean, you look at edge prospects in recent years. He's not really like a Myles Garrett level of prospect, but I'd say certainly at the level of Aiden Hutchinson a few years ago, who was he fell to 2 just because of his arm length and stuff. And Trayvon Walker ended up going number 1 just because he's athletic. He's definitely a better prospect than both those guys were, and he fell to 3 in this class. So definitely a good pick.
I think he's better. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to move on.
I also think he's better than Will Anderson from a couple years ago, and that he was very, very talked about. Generation was thrown around a lot with him as well, but I think that he's a better prospect in 1 year coming out of that. So that just shows how good of a prospect he is, because Will Anderson's been great ever since he's entered the league.
So at number 4, the Patriots took Will Campbell. I'm assuming since they spent the 4th overall pick, they're planning to at least give him a chance to start at tackle. I ended up giving this one a D+.
Whoa.
It does fill up a need, but I don't know. Just the more and more I thought about it, Will Campbell's not like a generational lineman prospect. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really watch lineman film, but I saw him on a lot of film as I was watching edge rushers, and I think it was Kyle Kennard, 4th round or 5th round pick, destroyed him. There's a few other earlier round edge rushers. I just know I saw at least 4 edge rushers just destroy him. I don't know how many pressures he gave up, but it was a lot. And Membu gave up I think it was 6 the whole year or something like that. Just so much worse of a production-wise for Will Campbell than like Armand Membu, who went 4 or 3 picks later. And they could have traded back. I mean, I know they couldn't have gotten a lot of value just because this class fell off after 3. Winning that last game with Joe Milton really, really hurt them and their franchise. But, I mean, I'm confident Will Campbell will be a good player on the offensive line. Just not worth a 4th overall pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, like you said, the Joe Milton game really is, scarring Patriots fans right now. I ended up going with a C, not as it's not that far from a D+, I guess, but it just sounds a lot more intimidating when you say D+. Purely because they could have gotten so much better of a player. I also like Armand Membu a lot more. Obviously, a lot of people have a problem with Will Campbell's short arms. I don't really care about that. If you're a good player, you're a good player. But it does make you feel even more like he's going to transition into that guard spot. Like you said, there are times that he can't really keep up on the end. maybe it's because of the short arms. I don't think it is, but whatever it may be, there are times he gets beat, and he doesn't have as high as a ceiling as some of these other guys for sure. Not the most athletic by any means. He's fine, but there's nothing crazy about him. Like you said, he's not a generational prospect. And even if he's bad at tackle, the upside is that he will transition to guard, and he'll probably be a good guard. But that's not something you take at 4. You don't take a good guard at 4. So if he doesn't end up working out at tackle, it's a bad pick, which is why I gave it a middle of the road C type of grade. Like you said, if they could have traded down, that would have been really nice for them. Even just sticking and picking and taking Membu would have been nice for them. You shore up that right tackle, which I guess they brought in. They brought in someone, right? I think I'm blanking on
Morgan Moses.
Yes, they brought in Morgan Moses, but you can move him around, whatever it may be. I think it just would have been much better of a pick. I feel like there's a lot of really good tackles in this class, and Will Campbell is just not worth the 4th overall pick, so I ended up going with the C there for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the highest a guard's ever been picked. Obviously, I'm not just assuming he's playing guard, but
yeah,
most people that you see evaluating Will Campbell evaluate him as a guard, so I just don't understand that pick. At 5, the Browns traded back to grab Mason Graham. I ended up giving this one an A-, just because I'm not like a huge fan of what they picked with one of the picks that they traded back with number 36, but that value of draft capital you got to move back 3 spots for a team that just needs to rebuild. They need as many young players as they can get, even though Travis Hunter would have been nice. It's like, instead of having 1.5 players in Travis Hunter who can play both sides of the ball, you're getting 3 players who are all presumably good prospects to play for your team and just develop throughout. So, and I like Graham. I didn't have him as high as everybody else on my board, but picking him at 5 after Will Campbell, it's not that bad of a pick, and you got all that value for trading back.
Yeah, I mean, I have it at an A instead of an A-, purely because it's being so overhated right now. I don't know why everyone's like, oh, it's a terrible pick. It's a terrible pick taking Mason Graham. Dude, they need interior D-line help. Like, they do. And pairing up Mason Graham with Myles Garrett, obviously it's not an edge combo, but having him in there, it definitely takes some pressure off, and you still learn things from Myles Garrett, and he'll be his mentor and stuff, and I think this is a perfect situation for Mason Graham, arguably, with that defense. They have a great secondary going with their corner trio, and I think it was a really smart trade down because even though Travis Hunter is amazing, they don't really need corner at all, and so I never really liked the fit with Travis Hunter going to the Browns. Instead, they got a ton of draft capital, like you said, only for 3 spots, which is crazy. They have a first next year that's probably going to be top 10. We both 2 first next year.
Theirs and Josh.
Okay, yeah, I meant the one they got, and then obviously their second round pick. We both don't like, but we'll talk about that when we do our full draft grades. But just a ton of capital, and you still got a phenomenal player. In Mason Graham in a position of need rather than taking an even better player at a position you don't need. And arguably those are about even. So I think that when you have 2 even things, but you get an extra first round pick and an extra second round pick for the latter, that's just a W in my opinion. And I think if I'm a Browns fan, I'm very happy with how this draft went for the most part. And just a very underrated pick right now. He's a great player, and even if you like guys like Walter Nolan more, I think you can at least admit that Mason Graham is a phenomenal prospect, and trading down and getting that much capital and him is a great pickup for them.
Yeah, definitely. With the 6th pick, this was one of your favorite picks. Your reaction was pretty interesting. I wish we got that. Ashton Jeanty going to the Raiders. I ended up giving this another A- just because the prospect's so good. I like the line. I thought that if you wanted to draft Jeanty, you should have had a line in place already. I do like their line. They have a bit of a question mark at right tackle, but they have a few young players. Hopefully they can figure it out. I think this is a great situation for Jeanty, but not really to like win games. Like this team, they could win like 7 or 8 games, but that's kind of bad in my opinion. And they don't really have a quarterback figured out. Obviously, this is a great landing spot for a quarterback next year or in 2 years when Geno's gone. But the Geno move just really, if they didn't trade for Geno, this offseason by the Raiders would have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just building their offense for the future. So, yeah.
I actually gave it a B. And I know you I'll explain a little bit. When he said my reaction was interesting, I was very upset when he went to the Raiders. Reportedly, the Broncos were going to trade up if he got past them. We were going to trade up with the Panthers at 8, supposedly, which would have made me really happy, but still not mad at how the draft went and everything. But overall, I think this is a B purely because Genty's so phenomenal. I mean, it's undeniable. He's an incredible running back, and he's probably going to translate very well to the NFL right away. And he's such a good prospect. The thing is, I'm a huge believer in running backs should be in the first round. I know a lot of people think, oh, they're not worth the first round. If they're good running backs, like I think Henderson was he had a first round grade for me easily. I think it's worth a first round pick because I really like TreVeyon Henderson. And a generational running back is obviously worth a first round pick. However, I don't think you should use a top 6 pick on a running back if you're not in the situation to win. Like you said, the Raiders aren't going to be really winning games. Their ceiling is probably 7 or 8 wins. And in a tough AFC West division, by the way, which had 3 playoff teams last year, the Broncos only got better. The Chiefs got better through the draft. And, the Chargers got a little worse, but they're still going to be good. And so this Raiders team who went, I believe, 0-6 in division last year could easily do that again. And so it's going to be hard for them to find games that they're going to win. And so having Ashton Genty is great, yes, but running backs, as we know, don't last as long as these other players. And by the time they're ready to compete, after extending Geno, they don't have any plan for a quarterback of the future, and they're not going to be in contention to get one of the top prospects at the top of the draft because they're going to win at least a few games. By the time that they're ready to compete, Genty's going to be out of his prime. And that kind of sucks because I really wanted to watch Genty compete somewhere. But overall, I think it's only a B because of that, but it's still a B because how good Genty is. And so if you can get a quarterback back there by the time Genty and Bowers are in their prime, this offense is going to be scary. But it just is, it's putting a time limit on that. And it's just, I don't know if they're going to be ready in that time limit.
I see that, but also I don't really want to let what they did in the offseason affect my grade that much. Just because
that's fair.
Like, one problem in the offseason shouldn't derail their first-round draft grade because it's purely off of the draft grade. And I understand, like, the landing spot does have something to do with that. But for the situation they put themselves in, I think this is a good pick because what else were they going to do here? Like, trade back?
I think
that's, like, the only other valid option.
I think it would have been smart to trade back.
Could have taken Membu also.
Yeah, Membu would have been a good pick. I think there's a lot of teams that could take a Membu in that top 6 before the Jets. But I also just think it was a tough spot for them, like you said. It was. If you really like Tedero McMillan, I don't think that would have been a bad pick. Try to get a big body wide receiver, but I just think running back is such a tough position. It's a tough thing to take when you're literally planning on getting last in your division this year. So
I don't think they're planning on that.
Well, you get what I mean. You get what I mean, but it was just a weird pick to me. But also, like, we all knew it was happening. It was just
a weird offseason.
Just a weird offseason, and like you said, it shouldn't affect it that much. But ultimately, like, every team's draft grades are different. Like, I'm trying to think of a team with a really good like tackle situation. If the Eagles took Armand Membu, it wouldn't be nearly as high of a grade as if the Jets took Armand Membu.
They took him at 32.
Still wouldn't, because he wouldn't even start.
I mean, be the succession plan to Lane Johnson.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be an A. Or
I give it an A+.
Yeah, really. Okay. Well, I guess we just have.
I think I'm a big believer in best player available if you're good.
I mean, that's fair. Eagles are a bad example. They're just the best tackle duo in the league. If you could think of a tackle duo where they're just like, where they have other needs, then it's lesser of a grade than if a team that took him with a need. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like if they took him around the spot, the Jets did.
Yes.
He's obviously at 32.
Yes. You get what I'm saying.
Speaking of the Jets, we have them here at 7 taking Armand Membu. I just gave it an A. A lot of A's for me early in the draft. I think that's going to change pretty soon. But they kind of like got their whole line ready, but like hole at right tackle. And they fixed that with a great prospect in Membu, one of the best blockers in college football last season, not even just once eligible for the draft. He didn't really give any pressures up, and he's also a mauler in the run game. Just a complete prospect for them. I think he should have went a lot higher, obviously. I think he should have probably went 4, honestly. Even though you have to do a little bit of growing pains moving him to the left side. In the end, I think that would have been a better pick than Campbell. And this Jets team is just in a good situation to see if Justin Fields has anything left or if he can be a guy for you in the future, and just to get a quarterback next year if he doesn't end up working out.
Yeah, I gave this pick an A+. I know we're differing on what the plus means, if it's value or whatever, but just a phenomenal pick, like again, the obvious one, but the best one you could do. No better move could have been made for the Jets this season, and him falling to them is just absolutely amazing for them. They actually have a really good offensive line now. They're in a good position. I think Brees is bound for a bounce back year this year, so hopefully they'll have a better run game this year. Garrett Wilson is still developing, and he's great. They have a lot of pieces on that defense that are still great. And they're just in a position to continue building towards the future. And I actually think they underratedly have an amazing offseason this season. Moving on from Rodgers, moving on from Adams, and just, completely resetting. We don't really see teams do that often. But also bringing in, a guy like Justin Fields. Hey, maybe we get something out of him. And if we don't, and he's as bad as, people say, then guess what? We'll be tanking, essentially. And we'll hopefully get a higher pick in the draft and try to get a quarterback for the future. Because he's only on a 2-year contract. So I actually think it's just a really good position for them. And now you have Armand Membu to shore up that line and make it a great offensive line. And you see what you got with Fields giving a fighting chance. And, you're also set up. You've got your franchise right tackle for when you do bring in a new quarterback, assuming Fields doesn't work out. You bring in, let's just say the best available, Arch Manning. Obviously, I don't think they're going to have the one pick. But let's say you bring in this Arch Manning. Now he's got a sure right tackle and a right side to help develop and bring this guy towards the future. So I think they're in a phenomenal spot. And it's an A+ just because it's the best move they could have put themselves in. And I think they had a really good offseason.
Yeah, well, that tackle duo is nasty now.
Yes, for sure. And I think their new GM is really good. Came from the Broncos and everything, so he must be the reason they're doing so good.
I mean, they kind of just picked the obvious pick.
Yeah, I know, but the whole offseason.
I'm not a fan of the Justin Fields signing personally.
Yeah,
I wish they took a cheaper shot at quarterback.
Interesting.
Because I don't think Justin Fields he's getting paid $20 million per year.
I think so. I don't
think he's worth $17 million more than Zach Wilson. I know Zach Wilson hasn't worked out, but if you had a smart like offensive minded guy, I think he could actually work out with Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson makes his line look better than Justin Fields, which is I don't know. I just feel like Justin Fields is gonna make this line look really bad. It might be like a Caleb Williams last year situation where people are gonna be down on that line just based on Fields' style.
Yeah, I mean he totally could, but I also think that Fields has more of a chance to be a starter than Wilson, in my opinion.
I totally agree with that, but it's a lot more money.
Yes, it is a lot more money, but it's also only 2 years. It's not like you're stuck in this contract.
Yeah,
by the time they're going to want to use that money, it's going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, obviously differing opinions. Let's move on to the next pick.
All right, at 7, the Panthers took Tet McMillan. I ended up giving this a B-. Tet was not my number one receiver. He was in the same tier as my number one receiver, but I like the Panthers trying to add this target for Bryce Young because he's kind of in this make or break year just because, he did show a lot of flashes last season, which is why they have hope for it to be a make year, obviously. But we have seen a lot of bad stuff from him, especially early in this season. A couple seasons ago when he started in his rookie season looked terrible. But Tet McMillan, he's going to be a good weapon for him because huge target. Bryce Young's going to be able to see him over his offensive line. But, definitely, I think it's a better fit than who my number one receiver is in Matthew Golden for that team. But at 8, I think it was a bit early, which is why the grade is not higher, even though it's at a position of need.
Yeah, this is another hot take for me. I'm sure you saw this coming. I'm not a big fan of Tet McMillan. I think that there's a lot of receivers better than him. I think I'm a wide receiver 5,
That's
maybe.
Crazy.
I just think that there is such a high chance that he busts. I'm actually betting on him to be a bust rather than be a success. I think he reminds me a lot of when Quentin Johnston came out, obviously with way more sure hands, don't get me wrong. But just in the sense of I don't see anything special with him. He's big, but it's not like he's super fast for his size. It's not like, he's an amazing route runner. I actually think he's a bad route runner. I think Colston Loveland, the tight end, is better at route running than him. Way more sharper cuts. And I know everyone's like, oh, but he's smooth. Well, I don't really care if you can run a rounded dig route. I want to see you run a cut. But I don't see that from any of Tet's film. And I just think that he's a very overrated prospect. So I ended up giving this a D.
You're a hater.
Purely because it doesn't make any sense to me. One, they should have traded down if they could. Maybe they couldn't. Assuming they couldn't, let's say they had to stick and pick. I think there are many better options, Obviously, they have a lot of investment in the offensive line, so it wasn't like they were going to take an offensive lineman. I think there are better receivers available, guys that are less likely to bust. I still think that the weird thing about this class, I think a lot of the wide receivers are boomer bust types of guys. Like, what you're just kind of betting on, do you think they're going to bust or not? The only like sure guy I'm sure of like where he's gonna be is like Igbuka. I feel like his floor's high, but the rest of them are like boomer bust guys, which is kind of fun, but also kind of scary if you're drafting one. So it's hard to draft a receiver there. You could shore up the defense. I know a lot of people had Jalen Walker. I know you don't like Jalen Walker, but you could have taken an edge. Obviously, Mike Green fell. I think he's the best edge in the class, but obviously a lot of off the field.
Wait, what?
Oh, outside of Abdul Carter. Outside of Abdul Carter, sorry. But, obviously a lot of off the field issues. You can look into that yourself. But I just think that there were better picks you could go with, and I just think Tet is, to me, it's just a sure bust. I don't see what people see in it. I think they're just caught up in the size and sure hands. It's like, cool. You know who else has size and sure hands? Pat Bryant. No one wants him, So sorry, I had to throw in Pat Bryant. But I don't get it, and I think it's a bad pick.
When I'm saying he's smooth, like, I don't know about other people, but I'm not talking about his route running. Just the way he moves at that size is so smooth. But I don't think he was worth the 8th pick. This is kind of where he was at before he started falling, like a few weeks before the draft. I'm just assuming the NFL didn't have him falling. This is kind of just like people overthinking it. Like, obviously, we're lower. Like, I'm lower than 8th overall, and you're way lower. So I'm not saying like they're overthinking it. Like, it kind of sounds like we're overthinking it, but you know what I mean. Like, he was just moving down because people were tired of having him as their number one receiver, so they just randomly started moving him down. And the NFL doesn't seem like they moved him down at all. So,
do you think he is going to be a number one?
Dude, I don't see the high-end number one upside with him. Like,
okay, so then how is he your wide receiver 2?
Because
where's Travis Hunter?
I don't think Travis Hunter is my wide receiver 1. He's my wide receiver 3 then.
Okay.
But I don't know. Travis Hunter's, it's hard to put him on.
Yeah, it's hard to put him on any lists.
Throw him away because he's his own player.
Yeah.
Number 1 on whatever you want. But for Tet, I don't think he's boom or bust. I think his bust is he's a wide receiver 3. A good wide receiver 3. And
he's
his
not
boom
like a play style
is, like, you see Drake London, we kind of went through it. He's not a top 10 receiver right now. That's kind of like almost a little bit higher than I think Tet's ceiling is, if that makes sense. But I think he has a higher chance. I think there's a good chance he's a number 1, whether that be a middle or lower end number 1, if that makes sense. I don't know. I don't see the bust potential just because his hands are good. Like, if Quentin Johnston had good hands, he'd be middle to high end number 2 right now.
Right, but
because that's the big problem with him, and that's kind of one of the comps.
Right, but also if Tet was drafted 8th overall. So
yeah, I know. I don't think it's worth.
If he's a good tier 3rd receiver, like you're saying,
as a bust, that's his worst.
That is busting because you just took him at 3rd. You took him 8th
but,
overall, and he's a 3rd receiver. That's like taking Troy Franklin 8th overall. He's our 3rd receiver. Like, that is terrible.
I don't know. Troy Franklin's not.
That's also not a good tier 3rd. But like, who's a good tier 3rd? Like McMillan for the Bucks last year was a good tier 3rd.
Yeah,
as a rookie.
If you took that, you're like, oh, that was a bust. You're not like, oh, we picked Jalen Reagor. He's my least favorite player of all time. Like, I don't know how to explain that.
Well, I'm not saying he's going to be Jalen Reagor. Like, when I'm saying what I'm betting on him being is a 3rd receiver. That's what I'm saying. Is I think that he's going.
I feel like he'll be a very high end number 2 receiver, where you get like a guy who complements his skill set.
But he's also like got the skill set of a 1, not a 2. Big body.
Yeah, X receiver.
Yeah.
But I think you could get a Z who's better. And, like, it still works out. Like, I know X is, like, prototypical number 1 receiver. I don't really care about that. I think he'll be the 2nd best receiver in a good receiving room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I don't think he has any... obviously, I think his potential, he could easily be a 1, just because of his size and stuff. But, like, I think that what I'm betting on is him being a 3 or a low tier 2. That's what I would. You can clip this if he becomes like the GOAT, but like I just don't see it. There's no realm where I'm even considering him the 1st round, much less 8th.
That's crazy. Definitely worth a 1st round pick. I'd probably take him the 18 to 20 range. I think that'd be a great pick.
But you just said you don't even think he's going to be a 1, and you want to take him at 18.
No, I think he'll be a 1. I just think, like you're saying, you're betting on. You want your 1st round pick to be better than their average outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you want their 1st round pick to be above average 1 is what you want.
Yeah, so that's what you want, but there's a high chance that he's a little bit worse than that, not like terrible. I'm explaining that very badly.
But if you had to make a guess on what he could be, what would it be?
A very high number 2.
Then you don't take that at 18.
No, but I'm just lower on him. That's why I give it a B minus. I just like helping out your number one quarterback, who you think will be your franchise guy. I think that is what made the move get a higher grade.
Okay.
Just as a pure prospect, it's definitely not worth that pick, but they definitely needed that.
We're also like on the Panthers for forever.
Yeah,
so maybe
I know.
we should move on.
I was trying to move on like 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
So at number 9, the Saints took Kelvin Banks. This is kind of where people thought Shedeur would go.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of didn't think he would go there just because of the reports that were coming out near the draft. But Kelvin Banks is a guy who most people had as their third or fourth tackle prospect, middle of the first round. Kind of sounds like most people were saying he was kind of mid, but like you were expecting him to be like a building block on that offensive line. Nothing like crazy special. Probably doesn't bust. I don't think that's worth it at 9. I think Ramczyk, is that his name? Or
Ryan Ramczyk?
Yeah, that's his name. I don't know why I blinked on that. But he retired, so they definitely need to get a replacement for him. I just think they could have went elsewhere, like traded back. I mean, Josh Simmons, I have ranked higher, went 32. So I gave this a D+. I'm not high on the Saints class at all. I just don't. I don't know. The Saints, it's hard to grade them just because they're in such a bad spot. Anything they do, I'm almost lower on because it's the Saints. They're screwed. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually gave it a C, just a middle of the road pack grade, because I believe that it's not a bad pick. I just don't think it's a good pick, if that makes sense. I think it's right in the middle. In my opinion, Kelvin Banks obviously isn't like, no one thought he was going. I mean, people started thinking like right before the draft that he was going to go top 10, but no one really had a top 10 grade on him at all. So I just think that I think it's not a bad pick though, because I think Kelvin Banks is good. Like, he's a good tackle. He's not a top 10 tackle, but he's a good tackle. And I just think, wow, yeah, you can say you could trade back. That is the smart idea in theory, but I think that it's still good to take a tackle that is at least good. And if he works out being like, the best version of himself and he's your franchise right tackle, at least you can hopefully start a rebuild sometime soon. The Saints are in the worst position in the league, in my opinion, and a lot of others. And I just think that, there's nothing wrong with trying to get a tackle, even if it is a bit of a reach. If he ends up working out, then who cares that you reached? You got a great player. So I think that it's a middle of the road pack grade, because you really could go either way. It could be a terrible pick, or it could be an amazing pick, or it could just be an average pick, like a C, because he'd just be a good tackle. So just a really, the pick that makes kind of some sense to me. Like you said, Simmons has better film and stuff, just the injury concern. And if they traded down and drafted him, I think I probably would have given them, high Bs, maybe even A-. But it's just a little bit of a reach as of right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can trade back from any spot. I know teams don't really do that, but I don't know. Like, if you traded down to 18 and you got a third round pick, obviously that's terrible value. This is not the best example, but people will trade down with you. Yeah. And I just always see that as an option. And here, Kelvin Banks just didn't really make any sense to me, especially they have a lot of needs everywhere. And Trevor Penning is the right tackle right now. They spent a first round pick on him 3 years ago. Hasn't really shown any promise, but you picked him in the first round. That's kind of more investment than you have in a lot of other position groups. So I think they could have went elsewhere with this pick, or at least best player available. At number 10, the Bears took Colston Loveland. This is a weird pick for me. As a Packers fan, I just don't know why Caleb Williams needs this much help. One of the best. Now they have a really good tight end tandem. They got Luther Burden to replace Keenan Allen. It's they're 3 deep at receiver for stars. They got 2 potentially probably above average tight ends this season. Their line is now top 10 at least. Their defense was their strong point last season. So they're building this almost super team around Caleb Williams, but he's not super. So I don't know. But based on their needs, I would have liked to see them go defense here. They end up going with Colston Loveland, who's my tight end 2, and maybe even their tight end 2 in their team now with Cole Kmet. I do think that what's their coach's name now? Why am I blanking?
Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson's going to be able to utilize him. I'm not really worried about the need pick. He can play big slot. He can play tight end in 2 tight end sets. It's not as big of a deal as people think in some ways, but also they drafted Luther Burden, so now they have 3 receivers they want on the field at all times and 2 tight ends. I don't know if they're going to run empty backfield or something. I don't know. But I ended up giving this a C+ just because Tyler Warren's a better prospect in my opinion, and I mean, as I said, I don't think you need to be over worrying about the need, but when you're taking a player who for me was like, I don't know, 18th on my board, and you're taking him at 10, it better be for need, and it's kind of like a luxury pick.
Yeah, I am completely in the other dimension when it comes to my opinion on this pick. I think that Colson Loveland, you underrate him quite a bit. I think he's a better prospect than Tyler Warren. In my personal opinion, like I was talking about earlier, I absolutely adore his route running. Just absolutely phenomenal. I comped him to kind of like a Travis Kelce vibe.
So much glaze.
I think that we could put on, he could put on some weight. He's a huge guy. He's taller than Warren, I believe. Just about 6'6", but weighs a little bit less than Warren. Put on some weight, keep that route running ability, and he's got so much potential that I see, and I actually really like the fit. I think, like you said, he can play in the slot a lot. And as a rookie, I'm not as worried about him getting on the field, the entire time. Just get him a lot of snaps. And I think that he could easily be better than Kmet in his rookie year. That's how good I think he is. I mean, Kmet's not like crazy or anything, but I think he could easily be better than Kmet his rookie year. So maybe he plays tight end and then when they want to run, him in the slot, they bring Kmet on as the tight end. I think that could work really, really well for them. And I actually gave it an A- because, yeah, it's not necessarily a need, but I think I had him as my 5th or 6th player on the board. Like I really, really liked Loveland. Coming out of a draft, and I just think that best player available, like you said, sometimes, and Caleb Williams does kind of need all this help, which is crazy, but I've always been a Caleb Williams hater ever since he came out the draft, and I just think that he sucks, and so I think he needs a lot of help, and having a short tight end that's going to get open all the time, great against zone just like Kelce. But even better route running, in my opinion. He's not as good at finding the soft spot in the zone like Kelce. I think that's where he really came into his own. It's just, after the play breaks down, that's what Kelsey's really phenomenal at, getting open after that. But I think Loveland is better if you gave them both one route. Which one would be a cleaner route? I think Loveland actually is better at that, especially coming out the draft. So I think Loveland, it's just got so much potential, and I really, really like the pick.
So much glaze, dude. If a Bears fan was watching this draft grade, I think they'd be a lot more mad at you than me just because...
Yeah, they hate it.
You're glazing him, putting Caleb Williams down. How could you do that? Yeah, so this pick was just kind of weird for me. I mean, I saw some people expecting them to take tight end. They just barely paid Cole Kmet maybe last year. Yeah. I don't know how much he's getting paid, but he's one of the more high-paid tight ends in the NFL. It was a long deal. It was like 4 or 5 years. So... that's a lot to pay for your number 2 tight end, probably by the end of the season, I'm assuming. Otherwise, terrible pick. But I'm just going to assume he's going to be starting tight end by mid-season, and Cole Kmet's kind of just like wasted resources.
Yeah, I think he's easily going to be better.
You've been a huge Cole Kmet fan.
I haven't been huge. I just said he's a good tight end.
Like last season?
I said he was good and not great, and you wigged out.
Really liked him.
No, you just decided you hated him. So when I was like, he's good, and you were like,
I think 2 years ago you put him over Trey McBride.
Trey McBride wasn't in the league 2 years ago.
No, he was.
Didn't he get drafted 2 years ago?
No, 3 years
exactly. Okay, well, he wasn't good his rookie year.
No, he just wasn't playing over Ertz.
Yeah, he wasn't even the starter.
No, but I saw the potential.
Okay.
Huge Trey McBride.
I was talking right
Clearly,
then.
I know how to evaluate tight ends.
You want to talk about being obsessed with tight ends? Let's talk about Trey McBride.
Oh, at least he's good. All right. And at number 11, the 49ers came away with one of the more surprising picks in Mykel Williams. He's a guy who's pushed up draft boards right before the draft. Mm-hmm. At least it seemed that way to me. He's kind of like a late round 1 guy until he was like one of the favorites for the Saints to take at 9 and ends up going 11. He's a good run defender, pretty good athlete. It's just like he's not refined at all in the pass rush game. I think his pressure rate was lower than, why am I blanking on his name now? Shamar Stewart, who a lot of people are calling this like super big project, which he kind of is, but he's got the tools, whereas Mykel Williams does have tools, but not quite enough to take him at 11 with the amount of productions he's had. So I'm going to give this one a D. I do not like Mykel Williams. I did not want the Packers to take him at all, and he's a guy who we were mocked a lot, and yeah, I watched this film and I was super disappointed in him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I ended up giving a C+. I think he's a lot better than a D. I think that's crazy. I think while you've always been a Mykel Williams hater, I think he's a much better prospect than Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart having 1.5 sacks, and obviously sacks aren't everything. But I think Micah Williams is better in the run game, like you said. I think he's shown a lot of potential in the pass rush game. I think he just needs to get coached a little bit more. And, he is a great athlete. You kind of underrate his athleticism a lot of the time. Obviously, it's not as good as Shamar Stewart when it comes to the athleticism, but I think he's a great athlete. And I think he's shown what he can do. He's shown that he can win in every way that you want to see from a pass rusher. He just can't do any of it consistently yet. If you want to take a project, I think this was the project to take out of like the 3 projects, I guess. I consider Jalen Walker also a project, but I guess he's not completely. But like between him and
take him over Jalen Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched a ton of Jalen Walker. Let me put that out right now. But I think that if you're talking about him and Shamar Stewart, I'm definitely taking him over Shamar. I don't even think it's relatively close, and because of that, I gave it a C+. I don't think this is a good pick by any means. I think it's a reach, and I don't like taking projects this high at all. But the reason I said C+ is because they have just so many holes on the defense, and trying to fix it at least one step at a time, and just try to develop him. Next to Nick Bosa, you can mentor him a little bit. Like I always say, I think that's really underrated, having a good mentor like that, and hopefully he can figure it out. Probably a C the more I talk about it, closer to a C than C+, but I just think that it's not like necessarily a bad pick. It's a little bit of a reach, but if he works out, then it's a great pick. So I think I can see some potential in there with some other players like Shamar Stewart. I hate him. Like I just don't think he's good at all.
I mean, I just don't like him, but this is the landing spot, in my opinion, for a project edge rusher, just because Robert Saleh has had a history of developing these edge rushers like Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Bryce Huff. These guys have just came into that system and been able to succeed. Obviously, now he's the defensive coordinator for the Niners. So, obviously, if anybody was going to reach on him, I'd want it to be the Niners for him, but I think I might have given it an F if a different team picked him, just because of how bad I think he is. I do think this is his best chance to succeed, just because they need an edge. He's going to get a play early. He's going to get a play next to Nick Bosa. Wow, I'm slurring my words a lot. And, yeah, and Saul is obviously a great defensive-minded coach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what your grade on Shamar was then, because you better keep up the same energy for that guy.
I don't know. I've been pretty positive and negative. I haven't gotten a lot of middle grades yet. So at number 12, the Cowboys ended up taking Tyler Booker, another Tyler to add to their offensive line, kind of filling it out with the Tylers. I'm not really sure what they were doing with this pick besides adding another Tyler. I mean, I don't really like the prospect that much, at least at 12.
Yeah.
He's super unathletic. You'd expect him to be good in pass protection. He's not even that good in pass protection over the past few years. He's been starting all those years, and obviously he's good for college. Just not good for a prospect you're taking in round 1. More of a round 2 guy, in my opinion, just because of his limitations in the athletic department. You look at his speed, how slow he is. Is he going to be able to get to the second level and to run the block? We're doing that. Run the block.
Just start at, is he going to be able to get to the second level? That'll be better.
Okay, what?
Say, is he going to be able to get to a second level?
I mean, with that speed, you're wondering if he's going to be able to get to that second level and run plays. Just, I don't know why you'd take an unathletic lineman this high in the draft with such low upside, in my opinion. So I'm going to give this a D+, just because they did need offensive line help, and I'm glad they didn't reach for someone just to make the splash move. Like, what if they drafted Shedeur or something? I saw that as a possibility for some reason, just because, I don't know, I felt like that was a Jerry Jones type of guy.
Yeah, another one where I'm just completely different than you. I gave this a B-. I'm a big fan of Tyler Booker, and while I think it's a reach, that's why it's not higher. I think Tyler Booker's a great pick. Adds to the tie squad, and I just think that he's super underrated in a lot of assets. Like I'm not like, obviously athleticism is important, but it's way more important at tackle than it is at guard. Obviously you want him to be able to get into that second level, like you said, and just be able to push some blocks out for your running back or whoever it may be. But I think that if you watch his film, he's actually, and for whatever reason, I stumbled across some Tyler Booker film. I don't watch lineman film, but I stumbled across some, and it really is able to get into that second level, despite how slow he is. He's just so powerful, and he's really able to move the pocket, move guys that he needs to. You said he wasn't that good in pass protection. I feel like he was good, not great in pass protection, and that's something he can work on. But again, guards, I'm more focused on your run blocking ability. As long as you're good enough in the pass blocking game, and I think he is. And he just is a phenomenal run blocker, really able to push those guys, like I said, and move the pocket, move the entire, move the defender, which is really what you want from a power guard. And especially non-athletic one, be able to move and get downfield. And I think he does that at an effective rate. And, all the Alabama locker room just talks about how much of a leader he is, and people just rave on about the person that he is, and that's really underrated in a prospect. Getting a leader in there that's gonna be a locker room guy from day one is a big thing, especially for GMs and where they're looking to take people. And it's really undervalued, and I think Booker is definitely that type of guy from what we've heard. Obviously, I'm not inside, but that's what we hear from all the reports. Nothing bad to say about the guy, and so I think that's another reason I really like the pick, and I just think overall he's going to add an element to this Cowboys team that's needed. And, this Tyler offensive line is going to be one to mess with in a few years.
I mean, I don't know about, I forgot his name, their right tackle. He sucks.
Yeah, but the guard duo is really going to be good. It's going to be great in a couple years, and it's...
I'm say best.
No, I was going to say the best Tyler duo in the league.
Oh, I thought you were saying best guard duo.
No, definitely not right now, especially. But I think in a couple years they're going to be one of the best, if not. They're going to be up there for sure, and so I think that's a great pick. Not a great pick, sorry, but a good pick. Just a little bit of a reach. I wish they would have traded back. Like you said, it's always an option.
Yeah, at 13, the Dolphins took Kenneth Grant. For me, I thought this pick was either going to be offensive line or DB, just because if they trade Jalen Ramsey, their best defensive back is probably Kader Kohu. He's not that good, and Ife Malafon would be second, and he's also not a guy you really want starting for you. So this was just kind of a confusing pick where they took Kenneth Grant. They needed someone to play against next to Zach Sealer, who has been a very good pass rusher. They lost Calais Campbell, so they're trying to replace that. But do you really want to do that at pick 13 when you're starting Liam Eichenberg, who, he's not necessarily starting, but he's got a chance to start. You don't want to do that. Obviously, they addressed it in the second round, but definitely would have liked it if they took like a corner here like Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of better picks for them. What grade did you say you gave them?
I'm going to give them probably a C-.
Oh, okay.
Maybe D+, kind of in that range, just because I'm lower on Kenneth Grant. I think he was like 28th on my board or something. Like, it's a huge reach. Obviously, they do need DT, but not one of their top needs.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go even lower than that, to be honest. I'm giving it a D. I think it's a terrible pick. I thought Kenneth Grant was going to go late 20s, and he ended up going 13. Obviously a reach there, maybe even early 20s at the earliest, but still a huge reach. I would have much rather see a Jahdae Barron. Obviously, Will Johnson dropped because of injury concerns. Assuming he was healthy, I would have obviously loved to see Will Johnson. I think Malachi Starks would have been a great pick. There's a lot of things, a lot of directions they could have gone that would have been more helpful for them. And also, if they really wanted to go interior D-line, because it's not like it's not a need per se, they could have gone with a guy like Walter Nolan, which would have been just a much better pick, especially at the spot. He's a better player. I haven't watched a ton of Walter Nolan film. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But, the things I hear from you, he sounds great. The little I've seen from him, it looks great. Kenneth Grant is very one-dimensional and doesn't have a ton of upside. So it's like, I don't really understand the pick, and because he's not even the best. Like, I think there's a better position route to go, and he's not the best at the position route they chose. So it's just like double bad, and so that's why I gave it all the way down to a D.
Yeah, I think he was my defensive tackle 4 behind Harmon. I had Harmon above him.
Oh yeah, and
I don't know if I'm forgetting someone, but definitely Nolan, Graham, and Harmon above him for me. So definitely not that good of a pick. But I do feel confident he will be a good starter, which is why it is probably a D+ for me, which really low, obviously, but I don't know, just definitely a reach.
Yeah.
At number 14, the Colts ended up taking Tyler Warren. Definitely going to give this an A grade just because, for me, I don't know what rank he was. I think he was definitely top 8.
Yeah.
So maybe 9. I
think you had him at 9 when I looked at your board.
A really, really good pick here for value, and they've such a void at tight end. They've had it for 3 years. They've been starting Moali Cox, drafting Jelani Woods a couple years ago. He didn't work out, so they've needed a tight end for a while. And Warren's an elite prospect. He can do it all. Great in the receiving game, elite blocker. His after the catch, just some of the best we've seen come out of the draft. Kind of reminds me of Tucker Kraft in that department, able to break the tackles, be explosive after catching the ball. So definitely going to get an A for me. Obviously didn't fall quite far enough to get an A+, but really like this pick.
I'm also giving it an A. Just because I love Colston Loveland does not mean I don't think Warren's a good prospect. I mean, if you don't think it's a good prospect, you're insane. Great prospect, elite blocker. I mean, he blows Loveland out the water when it comes to blocking. I mean, let's just be straight up. And he's not really a route runner. He's more of a physical catch kind of guy, but he can really do it all. They played him in so many spots on the field. I kind of wish they didn't, if I'm being honest. It would have made scouting a little bit better, in my opinion, just seeing what he would do in a traditional NFL offense. He's not going to be lining up as a running back and maybe the tush push or something, but might get banned. But I don't see him running, quarterback and running back and all these other positions in the NFL. I would have just loved to see him run more traditional tight end sets. But he's an aggressive blocker, and I love to see that from a guy. He got a lot more volume than Loveland. Obviously, their offense was also just a lot better than Michigan's, but still a phenomenal prospect. I only had him a couple spots behind Loveland on my big board. It's crazy that we have two of this caliber of tight ends coming out in the same year, because I think they're both going to be top 5 guys down the road. A little bit of a prediction right now, but I think that how it's shaping up, they're both going to be at some point in their career. And so I ended up giving it an A as well. Like I said, it's just also a huge need. You don't want to roll in with Mo Alley-Cox. And if you really are still hoping that Richardson is something, which, I mean, I wouldn't be, but, there probably are, spending such a high draft pick on him, you gotta give him that tight end safety blanket, because that's it's a inaccurate quarterback's best friend, is a tight end that gets open and can catch the ball, in contested or, bad throws. He can go up and get it. So I think it's a great pick for them.
Right, you keep glazing Loveland.
Oh my gosh.
Like, indirectly, it's crazy. But with the 15th pick, the Falcons ended up taking Jalen Walker. Was supposed to go around 8. That was the most mocked position. Ends up falling to 15. Just because he fell, I'm going to give this a C+. This is a little bit, I think I had him like 20th on my board. So not that bad, but they took a better edge rusher later in the draft, later in the first round. So I'm kind of evaluating this as their second edge rusher, if that makes sense. I don't think that was as big of a need as, say, like corner. Like, they need another corner opposite A.J. Terrell. So DT, they just cut Grady Jarrett. And there was an elite DT still on the board who's about to go off. So obviously they could have went a better route, but the value here isn't that bad, especially for where I thought Walker, I thought he's going to be super overdrafted. He's played, I think, 300 pass rush snaps in his whole college career. That's why I just don't understand why everybody's saying he's an edge and he's a first-round edge. Like, we haven't really seen it. And, I mean, that's kind of like upside. We don't know what he could be if he fully developed as an edge rusher. But also, like, is he really that good at edge rushing? Not really, in my opinion. His bend is terrible for an edge rusher. He's like 6'2", 245. He's pretty undersized. I just don't fully understand the vision of him being an elite prospect. Obviously, he's going to play a lot of off-ball with the drafting of James Pierce. And they are then at like second linebacker. He's going to play some coverage. But I don't know. This wasn't my favorite pick as much as everybody else seems to like it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I haven't watched a ton of Jalen Walker, almost barely anything, but, he does have that versatility at least. He was supposed to go a lot higher, going at 8 was the most commonly mocked. So I gave it a B- purely because, it's not a reach or anything. And, obviously I like James Pierce way more, and they got him like 12 spots later. But I think that at least he has some versatility. He's got some athleticism. You can try to make something work with him, even if he doesn't work out at edge, because his edge film hasn't looked amazing from what most things I've heard. But you can at least give it a shot. And I think honestly, like, it sounds kind of weird. I would have rated it lower if they didn't get James Pierce, because they would have been relying on him to be a pure edge almost. And I don't think he's ready for that right away, especially. So I think that since you've got James Pierce, who I think is ready right now, and you've got the ability to try to play him in different spots and develop him, and hopefully Raheem Morris can get something out of him, but not anything special in a pick for sure for me.
Yeah, and at pick 16, the Cardinals had the steal of the first round, in my opinion, Walter Nolan. When we were doing our big boards, we didn't do them based on, they're more like boards, they weren't positional value-wise. He was 4th on that board. If we were doing positional value-wise, I would have switched him at Ashton Jeanty and put him at 3. Just because of how good of a prospect he is. He's able to win as a run blocker right now. It's a great, not run blocker, run defender. And he's shown so much upside in the pass rush game. His ability to just bulldoze people, get around people with his swim move, super underrated. He's able to win in every way, such an athletic freak. You just don't see these guys falling to 16. Like, Jalen Carter fell to 90 because of character issues. Walter Nolan doesn't have character issues. He's just a great prospect. I just don't understand how he fell this far for being such an elite prospect, and I think he's going to be a superstar on the Cardinals.
So I'm guessing you have an A+.
A+.
Yes. So I have it an A, and purely because I haven't watched Walter Nolan as much as you have. And I'm really excited to be honest, because, you just rave about him, and I hear only good things, which makes me more confused of why he dropped so far. Because everyone that's actually watched him is like, oh yeah, I love the film, I love this and that. And I'm like, and I've seen a little some of his pass rush snaps done. Everything I see, I like. He's got a great bull rush, obviously being huge. That's what you should have. But he's also got the ability to go under the tackle, swipe away, whatever you need. He's got good bend for his size, which is kind of crazy. And he just can do it all. Every way you want him to win, he can do it at the DT position, which is so rare. You kind of comped him to Jalen Carter earlier. I don't think he's as athletic as Jalen Carter, but he does remind me a lot of Jalen Carter from the little I've seen. And if he turned into Jalen Carter, obviously it's an amazing pick, And getting him at 16, like you said, he doesn't really fall this far usually. And taking Kenneth Grant over him was crazy to me. Yeah. Another reason I dropped him lower, obviously, like I said. But it's just crazy that no one talked about him being such a good athlete, being the athlete that he is, because people love athleticism. And he's not only just a raw athlete that people like. I mean, we got Shamar Stewart and Micah Williams going, who are purely off of athleticism. Like, they've almost shown nothing in their ability necessarily. Just the athleticism is there. And this guy's an athlete that is also, so refined in the run blocking run defending and pass rush game. And it's like, why wouldn't you want both of those things? It makes no sense. So really, really excited to watch some more of him. Gave him an A. I'm sure it'll be an A+ from the sound of things once I watch him a little bit more, but I don't want to lead anybody astray. I haven't watched him that much, but from what it sounds like, it was a steal and a great, great pick for them.
Yeah, draft day for me went great. I was cheering after most of the picks. Make me so happy. This is the one pick I think this might be the only pick that I was upset about in the first round.
Very sad about it.
Yeah, so upset. Dream pick for the Packers goes here. Very sad, but yeah.
Well, that is it for our top 16 draft grades. Let us know down in the comments what you think, you agree with, what you don't agree with. If we were just absolutely crazy on some things, who you think can be the steal of the first round. If you want to check out our 17 to 32, if you're watching grades, if you're watching this after a couple days, then it'll probably already be out. But if it's not, it'll be out in just a few days. Go ahead and check that out. You'll get the rest of our grades, obviously. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and have a good one.